Welcome to BookWorthy. Today we're talking with Healy Ikerd, about the author of The Red Ball, a children's book of friendship and forgiveness. When Renata's grandmother sends her a gift of a red ball, she's overjoyed. Little does she know this gift will take her on a journey of powerful emotions and life-changing lessons. Join Renata as she learns to live out her faith with love, forgiveness, and kindness, becoming the girl that God uniquely created her to be. Welcome to BookWorthy, Healy.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Valerie.
I am so pleased to have you. Now, we usually start our conversation with a random question of the week. And our random question for today is, what was your favorite toy as a child?
Well, I think it was probably, I had a doll that I had named Tina, and she was pretty consistent with me throughout childhood. So I would probably say, even though I didn't play with her when I was older, but I did I had a lot of stuffed animals and a lot of toys, but she'll always have a special place in my heart.
It's always funny what toys really stick with us. What was the one thing that, was kind of our call to home, encapsulates our childhood so much. I know for me, I had this one stuffed animal that looked like the dog that I had when I was a little kid. And so it was named after the dog, and I don't know, I still have it in a closet, and
it's still good.
Still special. So it's lots of fun to kind of think back of what are those unique things that made childhood special. So
yeah. And if you see them in a thrift store or in an antique shop or something, anything that reminds you of your childhood, it's definitely exciting.
So fun. Well, Healy, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book, The Red Ball?
Well, the story was actually inspired by my mom. She grew up in East Germany and in the 40s, and she would tell me about this ball that she received from her grandma, Dora, which is in the book, and how, because it was a very poverty-stricken country at that time, how excited she and all the neighbor kids were to get that ball, to have something to play with, because they didn't have much. And so I just took that story and added some more about her friend. I mean, I guess I can give a spoiler alert. I don't know. But her friend actually takes the ball. And so Renata has to work through forgiveness of Willie. And it's just her process of working through that, her anger and frustration and, confusion and kind of all that stuff. So because I work with kids as being a counselor, like I really, even though that's not all of her story is basically getting the ball. I did want the story to be educational and helpful for adults teaching concepts to their kids, because that's what I use books for a lot, some are just fun, but like it's a great way to introduce things for kids to learn important stuff about life.
That's very true. I think, books allow us the opportunity to look into different situations from different perspectives. Because I think Renata, she is so excited about the ball, and then she's confused at where her ball went, and then she accuses Will of taking it, and he says, I didn't take it. And I think that's a very relatable situation that kids come across. It's like, well, how do I deal with the fact that who I thought was my friend has lied to me? How do I wrestle with those emotions? And I think that's a great tool to use throughout this book. It's just kind of like, okay, these things can happen to us. They do happen to us. And we can either get stuck in the feelings or we can work through them. And I love how Renata does that in her book, and how you incorporate kind of a God story in there too. Was that your hope was for faith and turning to God to be a big pivotal point for Renata?
Yes, just starting from the beginning of just how grateful she is for everything, even when she doesn't have much. And that is really my mom in a nutshell too. She's very grateful for things. And I mean, I think that's why she talked about that story about the ball, and it wasn't read in real life, but Red's exciting. But just in being grateful for things, and how, during tough times, that even though there's not a lot, how we can still be grateful for what we do have. And so I wanted to make sure that, and that's, as a Christian, we should really be able to relate to that as well, of going, yes, we should be thankful for things that we have, especially in America. We're abundantly blessed. Even if we have hard times, we're still blessed greatly. So
I do love how your book kind of introduces the idea that different countries operate in different ways, and that Renata is in Eastern Germany, and that is a different state, but you provide it in a way that is not scary or intimidating, but just, this is the situation she lives in, and she is thankful for what she does have, and just walking through that. Different countries do operate differently. And growing up, did you experience anything that kind of was representative of those different lifestyles from your mom growing up in Eastern Germany?
Well, we grew up in the country, so we were probably, not, at least as a child, I felt like just seeing other people, they seemed to have a lot more than we did. And, my mother, because she was very self-reliant, we did a lot of she made a lot of our clothes, and we would garage sale a lot. So I can't really compare that to growing up in a communist country, but just not having all the toys the neighbors had and things like that. I mean, as a kid, that's kind of hard, and sometimes hard to understand, of why can't I dress like they do, or why can't I have all the toys that they get for Christmas or whatever. So yeah,
it is kind of, as they get into that kind of more elementary school age, it is this comparison, that starts, and it starts so young. Mm-hmm. And it just to be I want a red ball rather than, the broom that I'm playing with, whatever it is. But it's right. Just there is in this, culture of abundance, just a constant need or desire for more and more and more. And I think that sweet little reminders of this family story that you have adapted to be not just, a fun family story, but a teaching element too, is that, we can be thankful for what we have, even if it is just one simple thing. And I think that's something that our culture doesn't teach us very much, but the Bible does. And I love how your story does that. Now, what kind of is the overarching message you would like to communicate to kids in this story? What would you like the biggest takeaway to be?
Well, besides the forgiveness, that is a big component. I think is great to teach kids. But really, Renata wrestles with the concept of who God's created her to be. Because her mom asked her this question, when you hold on to anger, it creates bitterness in you. And she says, is that the kind of person you wanted to be? And as Renata goes to bed and contemplates that question, that's kind of what I want people, I guess, to really, the big message of the story is God's created us to be a people of forgiveness, a people of kindness, a people of gratefulness, a people of love, and that we can, sometimes we need to do a little dig deeping too, to remind ourselves that that's who God created us to be, not people that hold on to bitterness, or even if something unfair happened to us, which is what she was, struggling with. Why should I forgive him? That's not fair. That at the end of the day, it comes back as who did God create you to be? So.
Yeah, just kind of that reminder from, Jesus talking to the disciples, they will know you are my disciples by the way that you love others. Mm-hmm. And I don't love talking about my kids about forgiveness, but when I do have to, because there's that say you're sorry, ask for forgiveness element of parenting. But one of my kids gets really, I don't know, bent out of shape, a lot like Renata, and just kind of holds on to it. It's like, look, forgiveness isn't about letting them off the hook. It's about freeing your heart from the bondages of bitterness and anger. And it's been a hard concept to teach to my kids like this. Forgiveness isn't just about the person that harmed you. It's about you. And I know in my own life, I've had to forgive people that have hurt me, but I have never gotten the opportunity to meet them again and, reconcile face to face, but I was able to reconcile with the Lord. And it was such a sweet gift that forgiveness was in those moments where bitterness was sneaking in.
Yeah. It's a big concept for us as adults because we do like to hold on to things that don't seem fair or why should I? And, Renata does the simple thing of being kind and showing love to him. And I think that's an easy concept for kids to understand because sometimes this whole forgiveness thing, how do I know I'm forgiven? You act out the forgiveness of being kind and loving to them. That was the whole part of the note and the giving of the bread and the come play with us, that she could show that kindness and genuinely feel it, so that then he could kind of experience that on the other end too. But you're right. Sometimes we don't see those people that hurt us again, and we do have to, and don't get the opportunity to be kind or loving, but we can pray for them. And that's, I think, a helpful part of being kind and loving also, even though they don't know it, but
right.
God does. And that's who he created us to be.
He sure did. And it's one of those, I think Martin Luther King Jr. had the quote that the only way to cast out darkness is by turning on the light. And that's the light of God's love. And by loving is the way that you'll, change things, because it is easy to get stuck in our feelings. I'm sure you've experienced that as a counselor too. Yes. And just, those feelings can feel so big, even especially for kids. I don't know what the switch was, or from when I was growing up to kids nowadays. I don't know if we just kind of were told to suppress our feelings, or if we were just, I don't know, feelings weren't a thing, or we were outside more. I'm not sure, but kids really are feeling big feelings and don't really know how to manage them. And I love how there has been this increase in the Christian book market for kids to kind of give them those tools and understand that emotions are a gift from the Lord, not something to stifle and to just move on and that kind of thing. So how did you see in your counseling profession the need for a book like The Red Ball?
Well, there aren't a ton of forgiveness books. There are some good ones, but because to me, and I'm not going to put my book up there with great books, but good books to use in counseling, you can use for a variety of things. And I think, through the book, you can talk about godly traits. You can talk about emotions and managing those well. And, talking about, gratitude's a godly trait. So, being able to just pull different things out of there and being able to use those. So I like books like that. But so I hope to use that. I don't work with as many kids as I used to, but I still do. And I love to use books. I think it's such a great prompt of introducing any topic, because most kids will always say yes to, can I read you a book?
Very neat. That's one of my parenting rules is if my kid comes to me with a book and they say, will you read this? I have to say yes.
Yeah.
Just don't tell them.
Right. If they know that, Valerie, you're in trouble.
I know. There's definitely been some times I'm like, why did I set up this rule in my head? But it's been so sweet. And
maybe you should add 10 minutes to, that. It's within 10 minutes.
Right. Sometimes as they've gotten older, they're reading more on their own, which is nice. But every once in a while, it's just like, okay, give me 1 minute to finish this. And then I will love to read that.
Yeah.
So fun.
Well, one of the things I did do to kind of help, because I had created some lessons plans for teachers, because I thought, because I think there are a lot of neat concepts in the book. But what I ended up doing was creating a companion activity book to kind of reinforce a lot of the concepts that are talked about. So I've got like a story based where you are learning comprehension, a emotion based section talking about all the different emotions and answering some questions, and it's got mazes and word searches and all that. And then the last section is forgiveness, and it just does some different activities with forgiveness, talking about that, and then a section on trusting Jesus, just in case they picked up the book and didn't know who Jesus was. They can learn how to have a relationship with him too. So I ended up creating that, and that was like a lot of fun. I'm telling you, I loved like mazes and word searches and crosswords. I was just having fill in the blank for scripture. It was a blast.
I love that you've created other resources to help not just kids enjoy a book and to continue that learning process, but also for parents and teachers to have guidelines to walk through such a weighty topic as forgiveness and bitterness and trusting, in God's justice. Mm-hmm. I think, even as an adult, I just might need to pick up that activity book and look through it myself. You never know. Yeah. Now, Healy, did you always want to be an author?
Well, when I was young, I did write a few children's stories. I didn't really think I wanted to become an author. I just love to read, though. And I think when you love to read, you automatically create like stories in your mind. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but create stories in your mind, or think of, oh, that would have been a good ending too, or oh, this would have been neat to happen here. So I did create a few little books when I was young, but only my family knew about them. And I actually brought one out over Christmas, and because my dad had actually saved one because our house burned down, so a lot of stuff got destroyed. But he did have that one for some. I don't know how that survived, but I got it on. I'd illustrated it and everything. It was kind of funny. It was called The Stranger.
Oh my!
Yeah, it was. It wasn't great, but I didn't really even think. I don't know what back. When I was growing up, like if that was even a concept of becoming an author. Like now, you kind of hear, kids like give all these different professions, and I didn't really think all that much back then. But once I became a counselor, I thought about more about writing kids' books, just because every time I had, a subject out, I was like, oh, I think I could do a good story on this. And so, but again, author was not, out there. It was just like, I need a story on this to help.
Sometimes, what is it? You have to, if you can't find the book you need, you have to write it, right?
That's right.
So fun. But you've also written for some adult books also. So tell us a little bit about those books that you have.
Well, one is an anxiety workbook. It's basically learning to work through anxiety, worry, and it can be used for depression or anger as well. But it is designed to help just people walk through like they would counseling sessions. Basically, that's what I just created as, a book of all the counseling that I do when I work with people through that. It's taking cognitive behavioral therapy and integrating biblical principles, or maybe that's the other way around. But I start at the biblical base and then use the psychology and research to help people work through. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback about people if they actually work through it, which is the reason I wanted to do a workbook instead of just a book, is for people to walk through and actually experience the transition, just not know the concepts, but actually practice the concepts, because that's always my downfall in books too. I'll read it, get motivated, but I won't do anything. Like I'll be like, oh, that's good, but I won't do anything. So that's kind of why I created a workbook. The other book is called Celebrate the Day, and it is basically my soul in poetry. So, I've got it out there, but I don't publicize that much because it's just really vulnerable stuff. Just praising God and, hard things that I've walked through. That there's something very therapeutic about poetry for me, that when I have a hard time expressing like, oh, I'm having a hard time getting this out. If I write it kind of in a poetic form, it really does something. I don't know. That's maybe why David wrote the Psalms. Just because like it does something to really help you work through that sort of stuff. So that's what that book is. Yeah.
Very neat. I love that you're, created tools not just for kids but for adults too, to work through kind of this rise of anxiety and depression that is in our culture. And you're right, we can read as many books as we want on anxiety and depression, but if we don't really take the steps to work through it, it's really hard to overcome. I know anxiety and depression is kind of part of my story too. And it has to be this daily discipline of taking captive my thoughts and making them obedient to the Lord. And so I love that you've done that, for adults as well as, in this sweet little book, The Red Ball, with talking about forgiveness and, generosity and those types of things. So I love that you've done that. Mm-hmm. What has been the most impactful book in your life, Healy?
Probably the Boundaries book, if you know that one.
Yes.
I used to be a yes person to like everything, and it really made my life stressful. And then I was a director of a nonprofit organization for a while, and wow, the me stretching out I didn't even have boundaries, and so I ended up very exhausted. And that book just really did something in my brain where like, it's okay to say no. And suddenly I was saying no kindly and respectfully and lovingly, but I would say no to things. And I still practice that very much today. And thank goodness, because I don't think at the time that I read that book, at first I even knew I was going to be a counselor, but it has helped me really be a better counselor because I can separate. I don't have to carry all the burdens on my shoulders of others. I mean, I care and love them, but I don't have to. Jesus does that. And I can, go home at the end of the day and be okay. So it's been, that book, it's a blessing.
It is definitely a good book. I love that it also goes into boundaries for kids and boundaries in marriage and all those things.
Teens, yeah.
Teens, yes. There's so many different versions of that. Yeah. Oh, I need to find that one. I got some teenagers now, so we might need to check that one out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have a friend that says no is a full sentence, and she's been having to teach that to me because I am a people pleaser and I love to help people, and it's like, I hate saying no, but it is not, what's the word? Possible for me to please everybody and to help everybody. And so it's definitely, no is a full sentence is something I have to say to myself.
Yes. Well, I think people who have care and compassion as a gift do probably struggle with it more because it's hard to know. I mean, it's hard to care and not get in there and do something. Mm-hmm. I've just come to believe, like, as we have to love ourselves, we love God, and sometimes God is calling someone else to do something, and it's not just us. So we don't have to go in and save the world, but just, having a good concept of ourselves helps with that also. So
most definitely. Well, Healy, what can we expect next from you?
Well, I'm actually I'm in the illustration phase of another children's book. I had been praying about, we have a small farm here in Northwest Arkansas, and I have some goats, and I love my goats. So I was praying about, like, God, I really want to write a story about goats. And I don't know how that even looked because I had no ideas. And then one day God just gave me a little story, and I wrote it down and tweaked it a little bit, and so now it's in illustration phase. It's basically a story about a mama goat and a baby goat. The baby's a little anxious, and so mom gives him some things to help calm his mind. But basically what it's doing is teaching the reader about goats. So this is why, like his worry is, oh my gosh, am I going to know how to drink water? And mom says, no, you do that. And she just explains like all these concepts that he's worried about. And so hopefully at the end, the reader, hopefully, people that want to learn about goats will learn all they want to know. Although there's a ton to know, but hopefully it's a fun story. I mean, I'm loving it. So even if it doesn't sell, I don't.
Goats definitely have their own personality.
They are, adorable and ornery all at the same time.
Yes. They're awkward and adorable. And it's like, why are you choosing troublemakers? Yes. I think kids can relate to goats very well.
Yeah. Well, the underlying theme I had put in there is that there's the mama talks about a goat herd, which is equivalent to a shepherd for goats, and how much the goat herd cares for them and takes care of them. And they trust him, even though, things seem scary or whatever. And that's kind of, it's not blatant in there, but it's kind of an underline that that's who God is to us. So
that's always a good reminder.
Yeah.
For those being read to and for those that are reading, for sure.
Yes.
Well, Healy, where can people find out more about you and your books?
I have a website called writtenbyhealey.com, and my name is spelled Healey. But if you put in my name, Healy Ikerd, in Google, I think it'll probably come up. But all my books are listed there, and find out anything you want to know about me there. I'm learning to be vulnerable
too, right?
As a matter of fact, were you there, Valerie?
I was. I might have checked it out.
So they had me do. The publisher wanted me to do a photo op, obviously, so for your book cover. And so I asked the photographer, "Can we do some pictures with my goats and chickens?" So
fun. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Healy.
Thank you, Valerie, so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And thank you for joining Healy and me on this episode of the BookWorthy podcast. Check the show notes for any books or links that we discussed, and let us know in the comments what was your favorite toy as a child. Be sure to like and subscribe to discover more great books together. Happy reading.